Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dave here with Go Gamers, and today we're going to be looking at 14 broken PS4s that I bought in at my stores, and let's see if we can get these things fixed today. So I own 3 video game stores here in Nebraska, and we buy in broken game consoles quite a bit. And I've been repairing these things for years, for about 13 years now. And I decided to actually make a video of all the PS4 consoles that we bought in this week alone. 14 of them, and see if we could be able to get these things repaired. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick the ones that seem the easiest, and we're going to start off with that stack first. Now, when we buy in these defective consoles at our stores, we always mark down what's wrong. Now, what I want to start off doing first is start off trying to figure out how much profit can we make off of all these consoles once we turn around and sell them. So doing the math on how much I paid for all these game consoles, I paid approximately $840 for all of these game consoles, $60 a piece on average. So by the time we turn around and sell all of these game consoles, hopefully if we could get them all working, we should at least be able to make $1,960. And that's minus the controllers and everything. And minus that $840, we could be able to make approximately $1,120, figuring that we can actually get all of these game consoles fixed. And typically I'm always very good and successful with repairing these PS4s, but we'll find out today if I could get all 14 plus the ones here in the bin because I couldn't fit them all on the desk repaired today. So let me pick out the ones that seem the easiest first, and let's start with that stack. All right, so we have 2 PS4 Pros and a PS4 phat. These ones seem to be the easiest because they all claim to have hard drive issues. Now, when my employees buy these in, sometimes they might not mark it right, or they might not know exactly what's going on. So we're actually going to double verify before we put in a hard drive in a console that might already have a good hard drive. Let's go ahead and start off with this PS4 Pro at the top. And if it is the hard drive, let's get it replaced. All right, so we are in safe mode. So this definitely will be the hard drive. So let's go ahead and get a brand new hard drive inside of this PS4 Pro. Alright, so we got the PlayStation logo. Let's see if it can go to the fully initialized screen. All right, so we have life. That is 1 PS4 down, 13 more to go. So this next PS4 we have is also said to have an issue pertaining to the hard drive. Now, this console was actually super dusty, and I had to dust some of the stuff off. Typically, when it's very dusty like this as well, I'll always see where the Blu-ray laser goes out as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook it up. We're going to see exactly what's going on with it, and then we're also going to test that Blu-ray drive. All right, so we are in safe mode. I'm going to pop a Blu-ray disc in here, a copy of NBA 2K18. And just from what I can hear, that Blu-ray laser is also messed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the hard drive, and we're also going to replace that Blu-ray laser. So let's start with the hard drive first. All right, so we got the new hard drive placed in the chassis. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and throw the OS on this hard drive and get this thing booted back up. So let's see what we can do. All right, so we are back at the initialized screen, and we are good to go on this one. So let's go ahead and pop in a new Blu-ray laser and see what we can find out next. All right. All right, so this Blu-ray drive actually sounds 10 times better. So this one is actually knocked out. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fully put this one back together and move on to this last PS4 Pro. So that is 2 down and 12 more to go. All right, so we have our next PS4 Pro. Now this one is also said to have hard drive issues. So let's go ahead and fire it up and see what's going on with this PS4 Pro. So I'm turning it on right now. Turn over to the screen and see what we get on this screen. All right, so it's definitely going to be a hard drive issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take out this old hard drive, put in another one, and then we're going to go ahead and put the PlayStation OS on that new hard drive. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we are at the Sony screen. I'm actually kind of curious about the USB 3.0 IC chip on this motherboard because I ran into an issue, and I'll show you guys down here on the upper cam where I actually had to plug in this USB 2.0 splitter that you could get from Walmart in order for it to work. Now, typically when that happens, the USB 3.0 chip on a board is fried out. But I'm going to make 100% sure and see if I can be able to get this to work by just hooking it straight into the console. All right, so I have the USB in. As you can see, it's doing absolutely nothing. Now let's give it a try with the USB 2.0 splitter. Now, as you can see with the USB 2.0, it immediately hooked up. So we actually really do have a USB 3.0. It seems like it's working intermittently because I tried with 2 controllers and I was able to get it to work once, but that means we're going to have to go ahead and replace the USB 3.0 on this motherboard. So let's get this down to the motherboard and see what we have next to do. All right, so we have our PS4 Pro down to its motherboard. I'm going to show you guys under the microscope where the USB 3.0 is. So yep, here is our USB 3.0. Is next to our battery right here. And I'll actually show you guys on my upper cam so you guys can know exactly where to locate this chip at, just in case if you want to do a repair like this. So go some of your USBs. There's some virs that it goes through underneath your motherboard. Goes through here, goes through some EMI filters, and then it goes straight to your USB 3.0 chip. So I'm going to grab a donor motherboard and I'm going to go ahead and replace it right now. All right, so we have our USB 3.0 IC chip on the donor motherboard. I already applied flux around it, and I'm just going to go ahead and heat this chip up and get it off. All right, so we got the chip off the donor board. Now we're going to go over to our main board, pull off the broken chip, and get our chip put on from the donor board. So let's get that done. All right, so let's pop some flux around this old chip, and let's get this chip off of here. All right, so we have the old USB 3.0 taken off the motherboard. And now all we have to do is just place the new USB 3.0 from our donor board on the motherboard. So that seems about right, but we won't know for sure until we can get the motherboard on its side, and we can be able to check and see if everything is lined up. And we will also have to check to make sure all pads are soldered down. So it looks like we got it lined up perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our toothbrush with a little bit of flux on there. We're going to clean off all the excess flux, and we're going to make sure every single point on here is soldered down correctly. And if not, we will just have to go on ahead and resolder. So yeah, it looks like we got it down perfect. And I'm just gonna check the bottom pins before we move off this. All right, so we have all pins soldered down correctly. Everything looks good. I'm just gonna give our motherboard just a little bit more of a clean and then wipe it down with a cloth just to make sure all this XX flux. Now I'm hoping that this IC I put in is actually good because it came from a donor motherboard. Remember, I never know if these parts are good or bad that I'm putting in here. So I'm hoping it's good. Worst coming to worst, I will have to just take it off another motherboard. So let's see. All right, guys, so we have this PS4 Pro put all the way back together. I was actually working on this all night, and I replaced the USB 3.0 IC twice. Now I hope that it works now. Also, I had to do some work on the Blu-ray drive because the Blu-ray drive had a little bit of broken plastic inside of it. More than likely this console dropped, which broke that the plastic pieces inside of the Blu-ray drive, which broke out that hard drive and also broke out that USB 3.0. So let's go ahead and hook this up and see what's going on. So I'm going to turn the camera over to the screen so you guys can get a good clear view and see what we could get. So I have my controller hooked in through the USB, and we are going to see how this unfolds. All right, so we are finally done with this, and yeah, it looks like everything is good on this one. So now we are 3 down and we have 11 more to go. So let's turn over to our next game console. We have a PS4 phat that is said to have a HDMI issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn over to the micro, and we're going to look at those pins inside of that HDMI port. That side looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap it over to the other side, and that side also looks good. But if you look at the top right here, this port has been pushed back. So it looks like someone must have used too much force and actually push back this entire port. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and do a simple HDMI port replacement on this one and see if we can go ahead and get this one repaired real quick, and that'll be 4 game consoles down. So I saw a couple things with my eyes, so I just wanted to make 100% sure, because obviously this HDMI port is jacked up. But if you look right behind this Kapton tape that I placed down here, you'll see that one of these fuses is bent, and one of them is completely off. So I am going to have to zoom in, make sure I can fully take off this component, and then after taking off this component, what we're going to have to do next is put it back on there to make sure everything is good. Also, the thing is with these fuses, they have a little line on it, and I'll show you once I get it back on there. I'm going to use my hot tweezers to get them on there. They actually have to be put back on there with the line facing the same way as the other ones, as the other fuses behind it. So let's get this off and let's see what we could do. All right, so we have our HDMI port placed on this game console, and we're going to do a couple things. We're going to reseat this component right here. Then we're going to get the fuses. Now, since there's liquid all over the board, you can barely see. but there's also fuses right here, and there's a line over here. And once we clean it off, you'll see it a lot better. With those lines, when the fuse is placed back on here, the line has to be in the same exact place or it will not working, because that is your gate in order for it to be able to line up with the rest of the things on your copper path. Now, while trying to take off that other fuse that was right over here, I broke the leg, so I have to get another fuse from a donor board, but that is fine because that is definitely doable. So let's go ahead and get this component put on here, and let's go ahead and handle that fuse. All right, so we have our fuses back on there, and this was actually kind of frustrating because I lost the fuse that belonged on this board, so I had to take it off another board and line it up. And then also I replaced the little component right here, and I added more solder to this component and this fuse. As you can see, there's a line. You can see it more clearly on these. There's a line right there. That's where your gate is. So you have to make sure everything is aligned, because if you have it backwards, it will be equivalent to just not having it on there at all. So let's go ahead and get this put back together and make sure it works. So we have everything put back together. So making sure this HDMI works. It's checking the system storage. After I get done checking this, we're going to make sure it's going to show all the colors correctly, just to confirm to us that the components was properly put on there. And then also at the same time, I'm going to test out the distance to make sure everything is good. All right, so it's showing colors and everything correctly. I'm doing a wiggle test on the HDMI port. Everything is good. So that is it for this PS4. I'm just going to finish putting this one back together. So that is 4 PS4s down, 10 more to go. All right, so now we have a PS4 Slim. This is our 5th console. This one is said to have a hard drive issue, so we're just going to go ahead and power it on, turn over to the screen, and see what we get. See what kind of hard drive issues we have. It went black, but we're still getting a flashing blue light, which is otherwise known as BLOD, which this light on this power button will be continuously flashing blue. And it's still at a black screen. We should have been at a screen by now, period. So let me tighten up this camera. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and replace this hard drive. I'm still waiting to see if anything pops up, which is not. And we're going to see how it works after that hard drive is replaced. All right, so we are in. Got the hard drive replaced. Let's verify the controller, make sure everything else is good, and yeah, looks to be working great. So that is 5 PS4s that we got done so far. So 5 down, 9 more to go. All right, so we are now on our 6th PS4, and this one is said to have HDMI issues. So let's go ahead and take it up under the microscope, see what we can see with this HDMI port to see what's going on, and make sure this is what we need to replace. All right, so yeah, what I can see right here, you can see a couple of those pins are bent and broke in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and throw this on a workbench, and we're just going to go ahead and replace this HDMI port. All right, so we have everything hooked back up. We have our PS4 right here. I'm going to switch it over to the TV screen. All right, so we are at the screen. All right, so we have connectivity between the controller and the game console. Colors and everything is working. And everything is working fine. No pixelations, no artifacts. New HDMI port works perfectly. So that is now 6 consoles down, 8 more to go. So let's get started on the next one. All right, so we have our next game console. This is a PS4 Slim. This is set to have hard drive issue. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start this thing up, go over to the screen and see what we can get. All right, so this is definitely gonna be a hard drive issue because it's definitely not supposed to be stuck on 24% this long. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop in a new hard drive and see what we can get after that. All right, so OS has been fully put on the console and we are loading in. Looks like we have another successful fix. Let's go ahead and see how we can make it through the menu. Make sure connectivity between the controller and the console works just fine. So looks like this will be our 7th game console that we got done so far, and we have 7 more. We're actually making really good timing, but I'm actually going to call it quits for tonight. I'm going to come back tomorrow and we're going to get it started on the rest, and hopefully be able to knock out the rest of the 7 tomorrow and get everything done. All right, so we are back and now we have another PS4 that we have to work on. So let's see what we have, and we're actually making really good timing right now. So let's go ahead and see if we can finish this all up today. So we have a PS4 phat model console that is said to have a HDMI issue. Now, if you look on the back, you can see there's kind of an indentation here, which indicates to me that this thing was dropped. So what we're going to do is we're going to check the HDMI port, and we're going to check to make sure that this actually doesn't have any other underlying issues with it, like a blue light of death issue or anything like that, because typically that's what I see what happens when it's dropped. So we can see that HDMI port is see what it looks like, and it looks very bad. So pins are broke, and we're gonna have to go ahead and replace that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna simply hook up this PS4 to our power cord and verify that it has no other issues. So we're at a white light, which is good, but we still have 2 issues. We have a Blu-ray drive issue, and we also have a HDMI port issue. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to go on ahead and obviously replace this HDMI port. And then after that, we're gonna go inside of the Blu-ray drive to see what's going on. It could be a couple rollers that's broken off that Blu-ray, or it could actually be something as serious as something on that PCB board where we would actually have to replace the fuse. So let's get in here and let's figure out what's going on. All right, so we got it to take in the disc, and it sounds like it's actually spinning. So I'm gonna see if we can get it to eject the disc. Yeah, so let me go ahead and fully screw this back down, and then I am going to test out the HDMI port now. We are at a screen where it's saying that we need to install the update. Now, typically when it shows this, that usually means your hard drive is messed up. But in order to make 100% sure, what we're going to do is we're going to click on our PS button, click on cancel, and if it goes back to this screen, then definitely a PS4 issue. So we're going to click on restart. So it is now checking the system storage. If it makes it through this, then the hard drive is good. And it did not, meaning there's another issue. So far we had HDMI port, Blu-ray, now the hard drive, all the major parts that could have broke, besides the APU, broke on this thing because of that fall. This is why it's very tricky working on game consoles that have taken a huge fall like this, because this is normally what I see. a ton of different issues happen. So I'm going to take out this old hard drive, pop in another one, then I'm going to put the PSOS on the new hard drive, and we will be good to go. All right, so we now have the PSOS installed on this hard drive. And yeah, we had an array of issues with this thing, but I'm hoping that this right here is now fixed and we are good to go so we can move past this. So what I'm going to do is, once this thing gets turned on, I'm going to test the connectivity between the PS4 controller and the game console to make sure our Bluetooth module and our Wi-Fi antenna on it works correctly. Make sure it can sense all the nearest Wi-Fi connections, and then also make sure it can take in and spin that disc as it was earlier. So let's see what we can get. Make sure it has range. So the controller has perfect range, and let's make sure it can sense all the nearest Wi-Fi's and make sure everything is good. I'm gonna pop in this disc as soon as it finds these networks. So it found them actually fairly quick, which means Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antenna is working perfectly. I put in the disc, and disc is spinning up to where it will actually now install and boot that disc. So everything seems to be working perfectly now. Now we have a PS4 that is finally fixed. Now I want to say this is the 8th one I've done so far, so we're going to go ahead and grab our next stack of PS4s and then just finish it all up. All right, so we have our next PS4. This one is a PS4 Slim. It is said to have hard drive issues, so I'm going to turn this one on, and just so you can get a good look of what we're repairing. PS4 Slim. I'm going to go back to the screen over here and see what we can get. So it's been at this logo for a little bit too long. Typically, it usually moves off this logo screen fairly quick when it's starting up, so that means more than likely it is definitely going to be a hard drive issue. So let's double check. Let's see if it pops up to the next screen, because it just faded away and it's not making it to that next screen. As soon as that fades away, it's supposed to make it to your next screen, and obviously it's not, because that hard drive that's inside of there is corrupted. So let's go ahead, let's go back over to the upper cam and let's get this fixed. All right, so let's check the connectivity of the controller and console, check the range. Everything is working and connecting just fine. Make sure it can take in the disc and read the disc. So it spins that disc up, takes it in just fine, and everything on this console looks to be working great. So now this is our 9th game console that we repair, and now we got 5 left to go. So now it's crunch time. Let's hurry up and get those ones knocked out and done. All right, so this next PS4 is a PS4 phat. It's said to not be accepting discs at all, so that could be a couple different issues. It could obviously be something with the Blu-ray drive internally, like one of the rollers. Also, it could be anything like the mechanism on the Blu-ray drive that allows it to go in, or it could be as worse as the PCB. But we will go over here and check to see what's going on. All right, so we have it down to the Blu-ray drive, and let's see what we could get. I actually rolled over the drive just to see what was going on. As you can see, somebody has been in here, because they actually took the white tape that goes on this laser. I hate when this happens, because you never know what they did. As you can see, you saw the laser jump and slide up, and you see the laser. Let's move it again. But it's not wanting to roll it in at all. All right, so what we're going to start off doing is we're going to start off putting the multimeter onto this board and seeing if we can find anything wrong with them. So we have 2 boards, one for reference. This is the board that came off that old Blu-ray, and this is the board that we're going to use as reference points just to make sure we're getting all the correct voltage and continuity. So let's get this hooked up and see. Now, I mainly see where these fuses go out on the PS4 Slims. It's typically the F6202, but these ones we don't have a F6202. We have a F6201 and a F6 and a F203. Actually, not an F6201, but a F201 and a F203 section of the boards, and a F202. So we're gonna see which ones is burnt out. So we're gonna start with your F201. See if we get continuity on our multimeter. We are getting a perfect read of continuity with that one. So let's move on to this next one. We're getting continuity. Let's test this one. Actually, this one kind of looks beat up a little bit. So let's test it out. I am getting no reading on that one. So we found our fuse right away. So that's good. Hopefully that is the only fuse, because if it's too many fuses, I'm rather just take off the Renaissance chip, remarry it to another PCB board, do it that way. But if we don't have to remarry that chip to another PCB board, we could just replace that one fuse on there and get another fuse off a donor board. That would actually work perfect. So let's go ahead, grab our tweezers, and let's get that thing off with some flux and our heat wand. All right, so that was pretty easy. So we have our suspect fuse taken off. Now we're gonna go over to our donor board, take off that same fuse, and bring it over to that one. So let's see how that works out. So let's apply a little bit of flux. All right, so we have our fuse off. Now we could go back over to our board. I'm gonna keep the fuse on my tweezers. So all I have to do is just move it back over, slide it over into that microscope. And we're just gonna simply just place it straight on there. All right, so everything is flowed into place. And we now have a replaced fuse. That quick and easy. I want to make sure this thing works before we even move on to the next step, which is testing it out. Bam, continuity. So we now have a PCB board that is reading continuity with all its fuses. So let's hook this thing back up and see what we can get. We have power, and this sounds like it's spinning perfectly. I'm gonna place a warranty sticker over it. As you can see, we replaced that fuse, the F203 fuse that wasn't giving off continuity, and got that actually replaced within what was that, maybe a minute, if that. So yeah, that actually went pretty quick. Definitely these are a lot easier to deal with than the PS4 Slims, because you got to get all the way down to the motherboard just to replace that simple F6202 fuse. And let's see how this thing works. And let's make sure. Okay, so it's reading this disc pretty fast. 8 minutes is about the average that it takes to fully install this disc. Let's make sure it can eject just fine. All right, so we got it to eject, and I just dropped my disc. Hopefully it is not broke. So there is still one slight issue with this PS4. It does actually seem like the actual sound on the motherboard is actually broken off. And that is kind of not really important to replace because most people don't care for that sound. It's just a beeping noise. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sell this at a slightly discounted price, besides actually desoldering that off a motherboard and putting on another one. So this one I'm actually gonna consider fixed now that we got that fuse replaced, and that right there is 10 consoles down. It seems like we got 4 more to go. All right, so we have our next PS4. This is our 11th game console, and it is said to turn off after playing for a little bit. Typically that's going to be a fan issue. So let's go over to our upper cam. It's a PS4 Slim. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop this top cover off so we can see if this fan turns on and spins. There's a small crack right here, which leads me to believe that this was dropped. So let's see. Or it could have just been stepped on, but we'll know for a fact. Fan actually started spinning right away. Fan is spinning, disc is spinning. Let's see if it pops up on our screen over here. It actually seems like it's going to be a hard drive issue. So if it's staying on, cutting off, or just freezing up, definitely hard drive issue, because the hard drive is corrupted, but it's good enough to have that PS OS on there. Wow, it's sitting at 100% way too long. So we have another hard drive repair. All right, so we got our new hard drive in. Let's going ahead and do the same thing we did before. We're gonna pop in the USB drive with our PSOS on it, and we are going to install our new PSOS on our hard drive. So let's see how this works out. All right, OS installed. Let's see what we get at the initialized screen. All right, so we are at the initialized screen. Controller is connected. Connectivity from a far range seems to be working well. Let's double check the Wi-Fi to make sure that is also working as well. And looks like it is detecting Wi-Fi network as well. So looks like everything on this one is actually working great. That is actually 11 game consoles down, and we have 3 left to go. So let's move on to the next one and see what we have to go with that one. So this next console we got coming up is a PS4 Slim. This one is said to have issues. Well, it won't take in the disc, and it also won't update. So let's move over to the upper cam and see what's going on. So I have a PS4 Slim right here. Typically when I see game consoles have issues where, especially the PS4 Slim, where it won't take in the game and it also won't update, is usually a F6202 fuse. Because what happens is when you go to try to update it, it's looking for your Blu-ray Renaissance chip. And since that fuse next to that Renaissance chip is actually blown out, it won't be able to update that chip at all. So the update will fail. But let's turn it on to make sure to see what's going on. And we are going to attempt to put a game in it. Actually, there's already something in it. As you can hear, it's making a beep noise, but this disc is not wanting to come out. So let's get this cover off and let's verify that it is not the Blu-ray drive before we get in there and start doing tests on the fuses on that motherboard. So let's see what's going on. Also, a thing to note, this is the error I'm getting, which is a Blu-ray drive issue. 9 times out of 10, this is definitely going to be a F6202 fuse, but I want to check to show you guys so you guys can know, and to always just double check before you make it all the way down to this motherboard. All right, so I'm gonna pop this copy of GTA out, roll that up, and these are your roller gears. That is what usually would trigger for it to be able to come take in the game. And as you can see, it's not want to take it in at all. Not rolling these rollers, anything like that. So let's first dust this off and let's get this game console down to the motherboard. We have our motherboard right here. Our F6202 fuse is on this side of the board. So I'm gonna move the micro and we're gonna turn on our light. And we are going to see if we can be able to bring that up for you guys. So let's see if we can zoom in. Bam. So F6202. And we're going to test out both of them to see which one of these fuses are shot out. So here we are. Let's test these two fuses. This one is reading perfect continuity. Also, this one is reading perfect continuity. So both of these fuses are actually working perfect. So let's see if we can find another potential fuse that could be blown out on this board. So let's test our other fuses on the other side. So we're going to test our F6001 fuse. See if we get continuity out of that. We are getting continuity. We are getting continuity. And we are getting continuity. And I'm not getting a reading out of this. There we go. So we are getting a reading. So we have continuity here as well. So let's test our F5103 fuse. See what we get. And we have continuity. Ha ha ha. This is a tricky one. So with this PS4 Slim, I'm actually gonna have to cut my losses on this one and take my L, because unfortunately I can actually not get this one working. I went through every single fuse. I actually been working on this the past couple days for quite a bit of time, and I could not figure it out. I was testing every single diode cap on this board, and I cannot figure it out. So if you guys have any suggestions on what you think I should replace, please go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below, because that would be very helpful. So let's go ahead and move on to our next PS4 game console. All right, so far we have 11 consoles repaired, one that was unrepairable, and we have 2 consoles left. So these last 2 consoles is going to be HDMI port issues, and let's go ahead and hook this one up and see what we can get on the screen. So let's switch over to the upper cam. I am going to connect this to the HDMI and see what we can get. All right, so we are getting no signal. We have the white light on the PS4. So yeah, definitely HDMI port issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this thing open and go ahead and get the HDMI port repaired. So let's get it down to the motherboard and see what's going on. All right, so we have it all the way down to the motherboard right now. And actually looking at this board, somebody already tried to repair this themselves. It was actually, I noticed, because it was a couple screws missing out of this thing. And when you look down here under the microscope at this HDMI port, so you could tell this is definitely a botched job right here, that somebody attempted to do it themselves, wasn't able to successfully get the job done. All right, so as you can see, this header was actually not tended. The legs was definitely not tended at all. With whoever put this in here, as you can see, the HDMI port actually broke completely in half as soon as I got that thing out of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually tend this HDMI header. Finally got my new tips in from my Hacko today, so we will be able to actually use a good solder iron. So I'm going to go ahead and let this heat up, and we're going to go ahead and get this done. All right, so we got our new HDMI port put on. Right now I'm just doing an eye test, making sure everything is level and everything is fine. Everything is level and on there correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Now, as you can see, I did add in a little bit too much solder on that bottom right leg over there, but that's not a big deal, because what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply a little bit of flux over there, move that solder around, share it with the leg right above it, and desolder some of it. So let's see what we get. All right, so every single pad is soldered down and soldered down correctly. So we're gonna go ahead and just clean up this HDMI port, remove this Kapton tape, and we are going to put everything back together and make sure our new HDMI port is working properly. All right, so we have everything all back together. Now it's time for the moment of truth. I'm going to switch to the channel over here and see what we get on our screen. So we have the PlayStation screen. I'm going to do a backport wiggle test. Wiggle test checks out with the new HDMI port. Let's see if we can be able to make it into the next screen. All right, so we are at the next screen and looks like everything is good, but what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my controller and double check this, press PS button, and looks like everything is good to go. So we have a fully functioning PS4 game console with a brand new HDMI port. So guys, that means we have successfully repaired 12 out of the 13 game consoles so far. Let's see if we can be successful with this last PS4. I will be fine with 13 out of the 14, and that last one we could be able to come back to in a later video after I could be able to figure out what else could be the issue with that one. So let's move on to this last one, which is another HDMI port, and see what's going on with that one. We are on our last PS4 phat, and this one has an HDMI issue. So let's go on ahead and dive straight into this one and see what's going on. Now, first off, I want to take it under the microscope because this one is a lot more noticeable than the last one, versus it was just a botched HDMI job. So this one, as you can tell, has that one broken pin, and the port is just completely jacked up. You can see that whoever had it before was just rough housing it. You see all the scratches and everything on it. So let's go ahead and get this on the workbench and get this taken apart and see if we can go ahead and get this working now. All right, so we have it down to the motherboard. We're going to go ahead and get our fume extraction ready, and we're going to pull off this old HDMI port. And what I'm actually going to use instead is my heat wand on this one, because this one does have tiny components right underneath this HDMI port, and I'm actually going to apply some flux around the legs and the header just to ensure that this can flow off easier than the other ports, because this is not fun to work around all these tiny components. So let's get all these covered. All right, so old HDMI port is taken off. Let's go back onto the microscope and let's go ahead and rework this header and these anchor points for the legs. So I'm gonna put a little bit more flux on them, and we're just going to resolder all this. All right, header, all anchor points for the legs is tended. So now it's time to throw our new HDMI port on there. So let's clean off the tip of this solder iron so we can get it ready to where when we're gonna have to solder down our pins onto the header. And let's get this new HDMI port put on. All right, so Feels like we have the new HDMI port on successfully. Let's do a simple eye test to make sure everything is level in there correctly. From what I can see around it, seems good. Now let's see under our microscope and make sure everything is good. Yeah, so everything is perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply a little bit more flux to it, and we are going to solder down every single individual pin. All right, so we have our HDMI port successfully put into place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our toothbrush with IPA and make sure we get this new HDMI port cleaned up. All right, so we have the HDMI port fully cleaned up. It is in there properly. Everything looks good. And now all we have to do left is just get this thing put together and see if it works. So let's see if we have a successful 13 out of 14 game consoles repaired. So let's get this thing back together and see what's going on. All right, so man, do I have a story to tell you guys. So I've been working on this thing for the past day and a half. Had to do a couple things to it. I replaced the HDMI IC. HDMI IC that I put in there did not work. Put in another one, and after that, still didn't work. So I had to go on ahead and redo the entire video section of the board. I put all new components. I redid all new EMI filters, redid the HDMI port. I just redid completely everything. So I just got everything put back together. As you can see, is still down to the motherboard because I don't want to put this thing all the way back together, not knowing if this thing is going to work or not. Now, man, I'm hoping that it works because a day and a half does not need to be wasted. So I'm going to cut it on. As you guys can tell, I just powered it on. So let's see. Okay, that's a good start. We was even getting this. Oh my God, yes. A day and a half worth of work. Controller is working fine. Connectivity, all controllers, everything is perfect. I'm excited because I've been literally working on this thing all day, and I haven't touched any other game console. This is just crazy. I never had to do a console like this where I had to redo everything on the board over there on the video section. So looks like that's going to be it for today, guys. I'm actually going to get this all put back together, and I'm going to show you guys how many donor boards I went through. These are on the donor boards. Finding components, finding everything just to put on this one board and get it working. So this was not a fun process at all, but as you guys can tell, everything is working fine. Is going through colors and everything just perfect. So 13 out of 14 game consoles repaired. I will take it. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you're going ahead and smash that like button. But besides that, I hope you guys have a good and blessed day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm out. See ya.